Hello and welcome to another Arseholics episode. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, we'd really appreciate you hitting the thumbs up button if you enjoy the episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and please share the podcast. Please share the podcast with any other Arsenal fans that would be interested in listening to us. So the game's just finished. We're actually recording straight after the game. Arsenal 0, Liverpool 3. Pretty terrible performance, terrible night for Arsenal. We could probably end it there, boys. What do you think?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Good night. Bye.
Yeah. Well, awful performance, as I said. Just a game that we didn't really even turn up to. A game that it looked like the players weren't really that bothered, and we were just outclassed and second best all over the pitch. What were your guys' thoughts, sort of, as the game progressed and unfolded?
Well, to be honest, when we started, like I thought, the first couple of minutes, we showed quite a good amount of energy. I thought, I thought so quite energetic. It looked like we were at the races, that kind of thing. And actually, overall, like the first sort of, I guess, 5 minutes or so, I remember feeling that although neither team had created a chance, I thought that we looked like we might have edged it as a better side, and that was about it. And then it just
there was like 30 seconds at the start of the second half where we came out and we looked like, Arteta's rollocked him.
That's what I thought. I thought it would be a West Ham game all over again. Like, going
it was 0-0 at that point as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I was actually quite confident for about 30 seconds of the whole game. And
so we had about two and a half minutes of the whole game where
we should have scored a couple of goals in that 30 seconds. That was our chance.
Yeah,
it was just a performance.
I'd agree. It was a bit of a throwback to the pre-December days, and where we've been on a bit of a honeymoon period since we tweaked things and we got Odegaard in January. But this was just a throwback to just remembering how bad some of these players can actually be. And we saw the worst side of pretty much every single player on the pitch.
Like, there was the stat that before the game, they said that this was the first time that Auba and Pepe and Laca had started since the FA Cup final. And on this basis, you can see why. Like, there was a time, remember guys, there was a time, right, where squad depth was a real issue at Arsenal. You always felt like the first team looked okay, particularly under the Wenger days towards the end, but you always looked at the bench and it was like, oh, we've got no options on the bench. And it was a real difference between us and the teams above us. And we got ourselves in a situation now where we had some injuries to some key players, right? So in theory, 4 starting players didn't play today, but we were able to field Pepe, Auba and Laca in that front three, our sort of top 3 most expensive signings. So it's not a matter of squad depth anymore, right? Those are players who have come in to fill positions and they're worth a lot of money. They're on paper good players. And they were just rubbish. Well, they were just so bad.
Yeah, to give you a sense of how bad it was, our expected goals today. So for those of you who don't understand what expected goals are, it basically takes the quality of your chances and says, based on statistics, how many goals would you score in a game? Our expected goals was 0.09, which is the lowest it's been for Arsenal since records began in 2014. Wow. So we haven't had a worse game going forward in terms of creating chances for the last 7 years.
They're lucky that records only started in 2014. I think if the start of time, it would have been about 50 years or something. That was shocking.
Imagine that, though. Imagine that, like your worst expected goals since records began, when you've got that amount of attacking talent on the pitch, or talent. Well, I mean, we should be using that loosely almost now as a talent based on price tag and reputation to a certain degree. But I think, today, just for me, it was felt so humbling at the end of it. It just felt like a massive reminder of the quality of some of our players. And I don't want to get to it because, whenever we lose, like, it's important not to just go over the top. And I think that it's a case where some of the players who are a bit younger, I think it was just a reminder that they've got some way to go. Maybe they can still get to where they need to go. But, you know, there are some of those players that it just felt like this was a reminder that they're not good enough.
Yeah. It's the manner of the defeat, which is the most disappointing. Like when we lost to Wolves, we played the best first half that we've seen for a long time. And then we got unlucky and we lost. And even since December, like most, like we've seen a new team since December, but obviously we haven't been winning all our games. We've still lost a fair amount, but we can still come out of those and with confidence, saying, you know, we can sort of see the improvements. We can, sort of see something. And just today, I just felt like I was just waiting for that. Again, as we sort of predicted before the game, we were going to have bad moments, and we're notoriously poor starters. We have been anyway for the last certain amount of games. So I was just sort of waiting for that, that switch moment where we turn it on. And it was just disappointing that it just never happened, except for that 30 seconds where we looked like we were coming out at half time. Just never came to the races. And I can't remember the last time we never even had like a 5-minute point of the game where we were dominant. Like we were second best throughout the whole game.
What? Yeah, no, I completely agree, Nero. And do you guys think, or what do you guys think the reason for not just the loss, obviously, but the performance was today? Do you think it was Liverpool turned up and were just on it and just so much better than us? Do you think Arteta set the team up incorrectly? Do you think you didn't pick the right players? Do you think they just weren't up for it? Which is what I think, to be honest. I think it's very much to that. So they just turned up and just didn't. I don't know. I mean, we took just to touch on sort of my thoughts on this. We talked about in the preview episode. Liverpool may be distracted by Madrid in midweek, and we didn't really talk about how we potentially might be distracted by our game on Thursday. Maybe it wasn't that. I know we talked about this on the WhatsApp during the game, and we mentioned it, but it did feel like there was something just not there, where they come into the game, and as soon as the sort of tempo of the game was set by Liverpool and they dominated possession, they obviously had the ball and controlling us completely, and we couldn't put a few passes together. Every time we got the ball, we were so sloppy. It just felt like from that point on, it was inevitable that there was no way that we were not going to lose that game. We all saw it from the first few minutes. But yeah, just interested to see what you guys think the reason for the defeat was.
I disagree. We spoke about this on WhatsApp, that the Thursday game was having a huge impact, if I'm being completely honest. I think it was a combination of three things. Number one, Liverpool were very good. And I said this previously, that if Liverpool did turn up and pressed us and played well, we weren't going to win. At best, we could get a draw. However, I wouldn't expect us to be, even if Liverpool did turn up, which they did, I don't expect us to be this bad. And then I think it's two other things. One, I think the tactics and system were what I think completely wrong, or very confused. And then the players on the pitch just didn't perform. And so when I look at the tactics, I think we weren't sure whether we should be a counter-attacking team, where we tried to get balls in behind to Aubameyang and Pepe, or if we were going to try and build up possession and try and actually just have a go at them. But we did neither, because we played Aubameyang and Pepe, and if we are going to try and build up possession, you don't really want those two players. You want Aubameyang in the middle, and Pepe's not really one to help you when Liverpool is sitting back and you're trying to build up possession. But then if you're counter-attacking, you don't really want Lacazette on the pitch. So I do think I have a little bit of sympathy, because two of our three best attacking players, I think our three best attacking players nowadays are Saka, Odegaard, and Smith Rowe. And two of our three best attacking players weren't on the pitch. But yeah, we just didn't look like we had an identity going forward. And we kind of had to play Aubameyang, Lacazette, and Pepe, because there really wasn't many other alternatives. And I think that really hurt us as well.
But although, we didn't have, I completely agree with those 3 points. I think the fourth factor potentially is the fact that we had a 2-week break from, I know it's obviously affected Liverpool as well. Having that disruption with the international break probably affected us more than them. It'll be interesting to see what I don't think it's great what our win percentage is after a international break. I don't think it is great. I need to double check that. But even if we don't have Smith Rowe and Saka, we still got two £50 million alternatives who sort of came on. So like we can't. Although the other the two young players are definitely better. That can't be really an excuse where the likes of Liverpool are still without Virgil or two centre backs, and they brought two new guys in, and they're holding the fort pretty well there.
Even with their midfield, isn't it? Because you can say
Henderson wasn't there. Yeah,
exactly. Wijnaldum's not there. Keita's not there. Like it's just.
So we can't use that as an excuse. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. At some point, you've got to run out of excuses, haven't you? Like, there's always going to be a reason. It's tough. Injuries are going to happen. We get it. Fine. We just looked so disjointed, and like good teams are dealing with this a lot better than we are. Like, I don't know what our stats are after international breaks, but there's no reason why it should affect us worse than other teams. And there's no reason why today it should be as bad as it was.
Yeah.
Because when we evaluated what happened against Liverpool the last time round, we talked about things Van Dijk was doing, and we talked about Liverpool doing certain things that actually they weren't able to do at the beginning of this game. At least we let them grow into the game. We almost just let them get better, and we just and we had nothing about us. Even some of our players who are supposed to be the good ones, which is so frustrating. I mean, listen, it's. I think Ceballos had a terrible, terrible game. So maybe part of it, when you look at Partey, you can say, well, Ceballos had a terrible game, so it was difficult for Partey. But I still didn't feel Partey did enough to stamp his authority on the game and do what he's meant to do. Like, he signed to run the midfield.
Yeah, I agree. I think everyone was hopeless. And Raj, you made a good point, right? I think at the start, Liverpool were probably a bit uncertain as to how good they are and how they would do in this game. But I think, those first 20 minutes, we helped them rediscover their form. We were like, every time we won the ball back, we gave it straight back to them and let them practice building up play. And, that first 45 minutes, Liverpool weren't at their best, but they were allowed to find their form, find their rhythm. And by the end, they were toying with us for fun. Yeah. And it could have been 6 or 7-0. And, I think Jurgen Klopp will be very, very happy with how things have panned out, because it's almost a perfect warm-up for their run-in. With Chelsea losing as well, they'll be delighted. And if they play like this, then they've certainly got a very good chance of making top 4.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, mate. I was just going to say, I kind of agree and disagree with you guys on that. Just in terms of, you mentioned the players that we were obviously missing, and the two massive players for us. And not to mention, we also had David Luiz and Xhaka. Probably missed Xhaka quite a bit today as well. But it was quite interesting because clearly when you take Saka and ESI out of the team, we are weaker, especially Saka. Well, I'd say probably both of them. And in terms of that kind of front four, our danger man, or the guy that's been pulling the strings for us, has been Ødegaard. And I did notice, and it seems like the obvious thing to do if you're setting Liverpool up, if you're Jurgen Klopp, every time Ødegaard got the ball, which wasn't very often, but he seemed to struggle today. Didn't really have options to pass to. I felt like he was, Milner did a bit of a job on him, and Fabinho, they were really good. And I guess on that basis, we of course miss players like Saka and ESR, because if the three of them are playing, it gives Liverpool a lot more to think about. But regardless, so I agree with you on that aspect. We're going to miss those sorts of players, but like you guys said, the players that come in are not, untested youth or whatever. They're not past it players. These are, Aubameyang's our main striker. Lacazette's been scored a half decent number of goals this season. These are players that should be doing a hell of a lot more. Just be interested. This is completely off topic, right? And just a random question is coming to my head. If we sold Aubameyang and Lacazette this summer, and there's so many ifs, buts, and maybes, how much for? What would we do with the money? If those two players were to go out and we were to replace them with two good quality strikers, or two very, very good strikers, would you? How upset would you guys be? Would you be that bothered, basically?
If we replace them, no, not at all. I wouldn't be upset at all.
Replace them in the sense, okay, you're taking a risk. I don't know. I mean, again, there's like a million names out there, and we're probably not going to attract the top names. But I guess I'm saying we're taking two players like Aubameyang. We know he's not had the best season, but since he joined us, he's been pretty unreal, right? You'd have to say, right? But he doesn't offer that much outside of the goals, which you accept because he gives you the goals. Lacazette's been kind of hit and miss, and we've talked about he's probably not worthy of starting for us, but he's potentially a good squad player to have, and he's sort of done a job in certain games. But I'm just sort of thinking a game like today, I mean, everyone was pretty terrible, but I came into this game and it seemed like Liverpool played as best as they have in quite a while. And it felt like their 3-week break, the 2 weeks plus the extra week they had, it really, really benefited them for whatever reason that was, whether it was rest, whether it was Klopp had a chance to do something on the training pitch with the players that were still there, that didn't go on international duty, whatever it was. But they came into the game and they were just so much better than us. And I don't know, I just feel like, players like Laca and Aubameyang, I'm expecting so much more. Like there was like you said, there was not even a 5-minute period of dominance. And if Erdegaard's being kind of taken out of the game tactically, then these guys need to step up. Yeah. And whether Aubameyang's playing on the left or not, whatever, like I still, it doesn't work, but there's still so much more that he could be offering and doing. And this is why I think they just weren't up for it today. Like they just weren't that bothered. I don't know.
Yeah. My opinion, I think selling both will be probably won't be a best idea in terms of just like the leadership qualities. I don't know what leadership qualities, but the leadership qualities they bring. The fact that it was Aubameyang captain today, and then when he went off, Laca was given the armband. So obviously they're two leaders in the dressing room, and the likes of like Smith Rowe has said that Lacazette's the one guy that he's been learning the most from. And I know I've sort of banged on about David Luiz before and what he brings. So from a leadership point of view, no. And then also with Aubameyang, like he's had an off season. Like before this, it was like he was like one of our best players for several years, one of the best players in the league. I just think he's got obviously other issues at the moment, like personal issues. He's like missed a few games for us for different various reasons. So hopefully it's just stuff in his head, or sort of personal stuff which is sort of affecting his game, which he can sort of bring that form back next season. So I think selling Aubameyang will be sort of jumping the gun a bit too soon, but Lacazette, I agree, is probably, if a good offer comes in, it's probably the right time to sell him. It'll be one or the other. I think losing two experienced leaders up front, I don't think it'll be the best decision, because then we'll have youngsters everywhere or players without Arsenal experience.
Yeah, I don't think Aubameyang is going to be sold, given we've just given him a massive contract.
I don't think he is either. Yeah, it's just
but to go back to your point, Miles, I think, like I said earlier, right? I think our three best attacking players now are Smith Rowe, Saka, not in that order, but Saka, Erdegaard, Smith Rowe. Then I'd put Aubameyang, and then there's a huge gap, and then there's everyone else. And the fact is that the three that are playing today in Pepe, Lacazette, and Aubameyang, they are our three most expensive attackers, yet any of them are in our top three best attacking players. And it just goes to show, like, Saka isn't in the team because he's a promising young player that Arteta's gambling on. Saka is in the team because he is our best player. Smith Rowe is in the team because he's a better player than Aubameyang, Lacazette, or Pepe. The reason Lacazette isn't starting every game is because he isn't that good. He is sometimes good, like against West Ham, but you cannot rely on Lacazette, you cannot rely on Pepe, and when Aubameyang is playing on the left, you can't really rely on him either. So I'm a little bit annoyed with why Arteta played Aubameyang out on the left, knowing that there's no real evidence that he's going to do it out on the left, when you think the only real chance we have of scoring is playing, especially given the fact that we don't have our two best promising young players, is play him in the middle and maximize your best striker's chance of scoring a goal. So I am quite frustrated with Arteta. And the fact that he didn't really change it, and his only alternative was to take Aubameyang off when we were, I think, 2-0 down, maybe even 3-0 down, just sums up a lot of frustration, not just with the players, but also with the manager.
Yeah, for me, the only time it's looked okay this season when we played Laca and Auba together was before we had Odegaard and we struggled to have a number 10, and we put Laca in the hole, and there was a couple of games where it looked okay. but it's never looked okay to me when Laca's played as the number one striker with Auba on the left. In this system, it's just never seemed to. It's never seemed to work, and today is just evidence of that again. We didn't get the best out of either player, and it was really weird because if you look at the positions that the players took up, Laca's taking very deep positions. Odegaard's actually the furthest forward player most of the time, and this is again where, excuse me, where I feel we weren't able to get the best out of Odegaard for a number of reasons. I think, Miles, your point was a good one. I think Liverpool did a bit of a number on him anyway. But the amount of times Odegaard got the ball and there was basically no one in front of him was a problem. When he played against West Ham and he was creating all those chances, he was getting the ball and there'd be like 4 players in front of him. And he didn't have that today. So it was just the system just killed it. And so I think Arteta is to blame for the system for sure. But again, like you look at those players and you just think that none of them were able to improvise in any way that they should for players of that experience. And it was really poor. And I think to go back just to your blank question, Mize, about would you be unhappy if we sold those players? I think Nero's point about leadership is a really fair one. If you took the leadership point out, then based on the performances of this season purely, just this season. Then I wouldn't miss those 2 players. We wouldn't miss Laca.
What leadership? Are you talking about form, though, right? Like,
exactly.
I still think. I disagree with Aaron, and obviously, I think when you said the best 3 players, that's on current form. Aubameyang is
based on this season,
proven, and he's probably on form. He's probably our best player. He has been our best player for the last 3 years, and he's at the off season, and I'm confident he'll be back once he's sorts out.
Based on a season isn't form. A season isn't really form, though, is it? Like a season's a long time. Like it's not like saying,
like I said, I don't know the ins and outs, because obviously there's other stuff there which is distracting him from his game, right? So
I still put Aubameyang as 4th, right? So I'm not saying he's like complete garbage.
But if you play him where you play him up front, if you play him up front, then that's again, it's just Arteta messing around with formation. And if he's a centre striker, he should be playing up front, not like left wing. We shouldn't be judging him on his performances there. We should be judging him on when he has played up front.
But if you judge him on the performances up front, then it's still not been good.
It's not great. It's not great. But again,
if you judge him on performances on the left, then you could say at the end of last season he was better than he was. So it's difficult. It's too difficult. That's what I said. Like purely on the basis of what this time
last season, we were like, let's break the bank to sign and keep it.
For sure.
But I'm saying now, 12 months on, or close to 12 months on, it's not just that he's had a bad season. I just feel like, I don't know, we're clearly not a team that can have a forward that only offers you one thing, essentially. I feel like our striker's going to need, whoever our striker's going to be in a couple of years' time, they need to be a more all-round player. Unless you've got 3 amazing if we're going to play this 4-2-3-1, you've got 3 amazing creative players that are just going to pick him out all game and give him, lay chances on for him. But at the moment, we're not a team that's dominating games and holding onto the ball long enough to even do that. We couldn't even get the ball to Odegaard today. So it was, like I said, it was a very much a random, very hypothetical. And
when we go, we say we're having a go at the front 3 because they, on paper it's their responsibility to score goals, but let's make no mistake, everyone else behind them was equally as bad.
Rubbish.
Ceballos was bad, Partey was bad. Tierney was the only real kind of promising player, was offering some promising movements going forward, but he went off injured, and after that it was all downhill, I think.
I was just going to ask you guys, so we talked about sort of the front players, but in terms of at the back, we managed to somehow get in. I say somehow, there weren't too many clear-cut chances from Liverpool's perspective, but we went in at halftime 0-0, and I think we knew what was coming in the second half, and it was defensive mistakes really that seemed to cost us the actual goals. They probably would have ended up scoring through their own quality anyway, but in terms of the goals, the first one, I think it was the Trent cross. I was really complaining about Holding for that goal. I just feel like he's just let Jota go. Chambers is at the back post, but I think he's worrying about Mane potentially making a late run into the box or whatever. He's kind of got that back post covered. Holding just loses him completely, and he's not really in the right position to then actually challenge for the header. Raj, you were saying something about Holding's kind of aerial ability.
Yeah,
generally.
he's a guy who's meant to be good in the air, and I think for someone who's meant to be good in the air, he's just not very good in the air. I know that sounds really silly, but it's just if we conceded against Man City and we only lost the game 1-0, but we conceded because he lost his man and he couldn't beat Sterling to a header. And if he's in the team and if that's one of his strengths, look, to be honest, if I just go round on Holding generally, like I think he's a really nice backup player and he's probably like a nice bloke. And he every now and again he puts in some good performances. But the fact is, at the beginning of the season, Arteta didn't want him in this team.
Yeah.
Arteta wanted to loan him out, and it was because of last minute injuries. He was like, actually, you can stay, and he put in some decent performances, and he's actually played a lot this season, but he wasn't part of the initial plan. And I think games like today show that he's still not. He's never going to be an elite centre back. He's not going to be a centre back good enough to get us into the top 4. I mean, we can't even get into the top 6, let alone top 4. And he's not got age on his side necessarily. At least with Gabriel, if you look at Gabriel made mistakes today. He made a couple of mistakes today, arguably 2 leading to goals. But at least he's 22, and you can kind of say, well, there's clearly some excellent qualities about him. He's put in some great performances. He's got age on his side. But both of them I thought were poor. But Holding in this scenario is the experienced centre half, and I expected more from. Maybe I didn't expect more from him. Maybe it's wrong to say I expected more from him. I guess what I'll say is your leader, your more experienced centre half, needed to do a better job at managing the second half than Holding did today.
Yeah, I think we're being maybe a little bit harsh, right? I think. But you summed up Holding quite nicely in that he's never going to be an elite centre-back, right? And I think if you look at that cross from Trent, only an elite centre-half stops it from getting to Jota. I think it was such a good cross that...
Mate, I disagree.
Yeah, he lives it. As in...
I disagree, to be honest.
You put...
Don't get me wrong, it's an amazing cross. I think it's the first thing I said to a group with my other mates, who are all random fans of random teams. But it's an amazing cross. But I don't know. I just feel like if Holding knows where Jota is, Jota hasn't had to do anything really to kind of get on the end of that header. He's not had to make a really clever run or any sort of movement. It's just it's put on his head.
Run because the cross was literally put on.
I know.
His head,
so that's what I'm saying. So if Holding knows where Jota is and is tighter to him, and he's got the aerial advantage, or he's got the height advantage. Sorry. So he should deal with that. I don't know. Maybe we are being a little bit.
Yeah. Maybe like if you look at the individual chance, perhaps, right? But I guess my overall point is, right, if you're getting balls like that in, only the best centre backs will eventually stop someone like Jota from scoring a goal. Like in this instance, you could argue Holding had done that, right? But 4 or 5 times if those crosses had come in, Holding isn't that good to keep him out. I don't think he's terrible, but he isn't going to be good enough to completely keep out a team like Liverpool for 90 minutes. He's just not that good. I think he is what he is. He's like our 3rd choice or 4th choice centre back, in which case he's not that bad. And if we're playing, some of the teams a bit lower down the league, he's okay. But I've just seen that apparently Luiz is going to be out for a while.
Really?
And he might require surgery, and he might not even play again this season. So yeah, we're about to find out.
I was just going to ask.
Nero took that one personally.
I was just going to ask, like, again, off the cuff, what we spoke about in the other episode, like Luiz or Holding, like if you had to keep one for next season, and I'm okay, I wouldn't say a fan of Luiz, but I would prefer him around next season. I think he has a lot more to offer than someone like Holding, in terms of like the leadership stuff and also just performances as well. Obviously, lapses concentration here and there, but he's someone on a big game can pull out a man of the match performance. So that's, I think that's sort of when that goal went in today. I was sort of disappointed with Holding, and it's sort of backed up my sort of initial sort of feelings on the topic of our centre backs. But yeah, now Luiz is injured. That sort of changes that a bit, doesn't it?
It's annoying, isn't it? Because like you've got in Liverpool's situation again, they're playing without their first choice centre halves, and they just, I guess, manage the game in a way that their centre halves didn't even have to do anything. They could have just sat on the floor the whole game, and they wouldn't have had to do anything.
They've done well. So I've just read a stat. So they've now played together for 414 minutes, and they've only conceded a goal via a penalty.
Well, there
So
you go.
they've come in and tactics. Is it? I don't know.
It's because of Fabinho, right? They're playing Fabinho at centre back, and whilst Fabinho he was all right at centre back. Taking him out from midfield just makes Liverpool so much worse.
Yeah.
The minute they put him back in midfield,
makes
everything just starts working again.
We never tested them. That's the thing, isn't it, Nero? We never tested. So I wonder whether Liverpool have just managed the situation. Well, they haven't managed the situation, I guess. Like they, apart from coming into today, were they the third worst form in the league or something like this? But like, they didn't. We didn't test them. They were protected well, and I think to your point around Holding or Louise next season, whatever the case is, I don't think either of them are good enough for this team. If we're trying to progress, if we're trying to get better, neither of them are good enough.
I agree.
So we need a different right-sided centre half. Whether that's one of the loanees, whether we think they can step up and be that, I don't know. But it's not Holding and it's not Louise. And based on what you said, Aaron, and about the injury, maybe that's the last time we've seen Louise in an Arsenal shirt.
Yeah, I think it's unclear if he needs surgery. If he does need surgery, then he'll probably be out.
he'll get a contract somehow.
He'll be out for the start of next season, but he'll still get a contract. Okay. So we ended up conceding again shortly after Salah. We were talking about the Gabriel mistakes. It's a fair point what you said, Raj. He's still young. We forget that, I guess, because he's played quite a lot for us despite it being his first season. But regardless, or not regardless, but even so, I still feel like and we said it again in our discussion during the game, he goes to ground for no real, I can't really see why he's gone to ground in that instance. Obviously feels like he can win the ball, but it's a bit of a risk when you think you're up against Salah and you've got to be 100% sure you're going to take the ball and it's going out of play or he's going to clear it, whatever. He doesn't do that. Salah sort of rides the challenge a bit, finishes really well. I don't know if he gives Leno the eyes or what, but puts it through his legs. I mean, Leno leaves his legs pretty wide open, to be honest. Makes it quite an easy choice for him to put it through his legs. Not that I'm saying it's Leno's fault, but it's a good finish. But yeah, I was quite, again, disappointed with Gabriel on that one.
Yeah, Gabriel's developing a bit of a tendency to be quite rash in moments. He'll almost, it reminds me a bit of Koscielny when he used to do that, where he everything will be fine, and all of a sudden he'd just dive in. And I hope he cuts it out because, look, I think Gabriel has shown enough to convince most people that he's got enough potential to be a top-level centre-back. He's just not there yet. But if one way to get there is to stop diving in like a maniac, especially against Salah, who can make you look silly even when you stay on your feet. He wasn't helped because he was left so exposed so often, and I do feel sorry for him, but no, two huge errors there.
Maybe the David Luiz mentoring is not such a good idea after all. Turning into him.
It's a good comparison about the Koscielny thing. I haven't really thought about that. I think it's a good comparison. Like he does have that, and then I think he was at fault there. Ultimately, there was a comment from the commentators about saying that actually it was quite good that he didn't then try and trip him up, because you see lots of centre backs missing the first tackle and then having a penalty. Okay, fine, fair enough. I mean, I don't think it was Leno's fault, but I'm always a bit annoyed at keeper. If the ball goes through a keeper's legs, I always think they could have done something
just
a bit
silly,
different.
Right?
It just looks silly, especially when you're going for like a cricket type long barrier kind of thing, which is what he did, right? And it kind of goes through a really weird. I didn't really like that. I didn't think that was great. And maybe it was just clever from Salah. Maybe it was just like a really clever finish. So I don't know, but it just looked, the whole thing just looked comedy at that point, and then it just kind of continued in this comedy vein until the third goal, didn't it?
Yeah, and third goal, another Gabriel mistake, unfortunately. So, playing out from the back, but I personally don't feel like he was under too much pressure. I think Salah's pressing him or about to start pressing him or starts running towards him, but he's still got a little bit of time to decide what he's going to do, and he just executes the pass really, really badly. Maybe his head's gone from the first mistake or whatever. I don't know, but again, just generally pretty poor from us. We can almost gift it to them, and they get the ball into the box, and Jota finishes.
Yeah, again, he wasn't the only one whose passing radar was just completely broken all game, but unfortunately for him, he gives it away in such a bad position that, and then at that point, Liverpool are really confident and like have rediscovered how to play football, and they just make us look very silly.
It's annoying, isn't it? Because I thought, because in the first half, it looked like we were more willing to just hoof the ball out. When it was a bit tricky. And in fairness, that had its own issues because we weren't able to string 3 passes together. And I think Gary Neville sort of was pointing out that Arsenal have to be a lot braver when they're passing, and we were just hoofing the ball out. And then you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Because in the second half, we're like, I think Arteta said, stop hoofing the ball, just pass it. And then we do that, and then we concede a goal like the third goal. And, we're probably under pressure more in the second half than we were in the first half even. So, it just, nothing seemed to work, did it? It was just a complete off day, as they would say, I suppose. Like, it's just everyone was poor. Like, I think my concern a little bit, again, with this is that we have to get better at dealing with it when some of our starters don't can't play. Like when we have to change the lineup, we have to get better at just adjusting and finding ways. And there's been a couple of games where it's looked like we could do that, but overall we are where we are, partly because we've just failed to react to adversity. And we're 9th. We could have closed the gap to Liverpool to 1. Instead it's 7. Top 6 looks, does top 6 look possible? Yeah, mathematically, I guess. But, would you bank on us making top 6 now?
No, not me.
We said, we had that period of games, right? Spurs, West Ham, Liverpool. And we said to really have a chance, we needed at least 2 wins. And we haven't got them. So not only have we got them, we seem to be getting worse. So, the league is, for me, at least emotionally, I'm kind of done and checked out. And I just really hope we can turn up on Thursday to keep the season interesting.
Yeah, I think the biggest disappointment of the game was Tierney getting injured as well in terms of our hope for the season. Like, I think I said, I would have taken even losing as long as we don't get any injuries. But that's the word to get a loss. Bad performance and you're arguably one of your most influential players out as well. It's a bad day,
especially with no. I mean, he's such a massive player for us, but especially with no backup left back as well, or orthodox left back to come in. So it's not ideal. Even though Suarez has done all right when he's played, but
I think he does the job.
I think the worry for me is we put Saka at left back. I really hope we don't do that.
We cannot do that.
There's a
I don't think he will. I think Cedric's shown enough to get that backup spot, or to get that starting lineup spot now.
I hope so.
If Cedric was poor, then I would agree he'd throw Saka in there. But we need Saka where he plays on the right wing. It'll be a tactical own goal if he does that.
I would have to agree.
Yeah. Well, it's just a shame. Like Chelsea losing. Like if we had won, it would have only been 6 points off them.
He'll never learn.
We've only been 6 points off them if we had. I'm saying
there's 8 games to go. There's 8 games to go.
8 games to go, mate. 8 games to go. 6 points is
6 points.
We're playing them as well, aren't we? We're still going to play.
Yeah, we play Chelsea. Yeah.
So it was like if we had won, it would have been not just mathematical. It would have been like.
Although, look, if we can make something on Thursday, it's almost a little bit helpful now that we can almost just not forget about the league, but we don't really have to feel guilty about if we drop points. I don't know who we're playing after. But it's after the Europa League.
Because now, what's the Europa? Is it top 6 or the top 7 now? Because Europa might be impossible to play for as well.
But Aaron, what you were just saying about the point you just made. We can almost sacrifice points in the league, but I think as a player and as a team, it's very hard to just switch it on and off. Liverpool was a tough game today. We got outclassed. They were the better team, all of that. But when it comes to us, the remaining games we've got, I don't know them off the top of my head, but it's a decent run-in, right?
Yeah.
You kind of need to play players into form. If the strikers aren't scoring, they need to start scoring ASAP. getting that winning mentality, that winning feeling, form, all those kinds of things. Like, I get what you're saying. You're right. We don't have to feel too guilty if we do drop points to the league, because we're not missing out on anything, right? We're just going to drop further down the table, but probably going to finish in the top half. It doesn't make any difference if we finish 8th, 9th, 10th, or 11th, really, apart from a bit of pride, So I get that, but I just think if you're a player and you come off, if you're not constantly, but if you're losing more games than you're winning, or you're putting in more and more bad performances and therefore not getting the results, it makes it quite hard to then turn.
I agree.
Not from a player perspective, but I think I don't know if this is what you meant, but more from like even a squad rotation perspective. Like,
no, I think from
especially
I think from a player perspective, 100%.
The semis, like if you've got like Thursday, Sunday, Thursday. But what I mean is, like, say you got a Thursday, Sunday, Thursday game in like the semi-finals. I think the semi-finals only 1 week apart. Then in that middle game, like I wouldn't play the likes of Tierney, for example, or like, so I wouldn't mind just going out with save your best 11 for those 2 Thursdays and play your rotate completely.
I think my point was,
because
you've got nothing to play for in the league. That's what I mean.
Had we had won today, I think we would have been like, we're not so far off. Like I said, 6 points with Chelsea still left to play. There is a hope. And I think then Arteta struggles a bit with, should I play my best team here? Should I, we were winning 1-0. Should I take off Saka? Should I take off Smith Rowe? And if we do drop points because we've taken off a player, then you have that regret. But now I think it's very clear. Look, let's try. We're obviously going to try and win every game. And I think we do need to build up that momentum, but not at the cost of anything else. It's very clear now that it's Europa League or bust.
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
no, I agree with that statement at the end, but I just feel like it's easy. I don't know. I feel like it's easier said than done in terms, like, for example, Gabriel today, right? He obviously made 2 kind of bad mistakes. That's going to be playing on his mind when he goes into the game on Thursday. Now, this is now all about his mentality as a player. Is he able to now put that out of his mind as a fairly young player in a kind of position where mistakes cost goals? Is he able to put that out of his mind, assuming he plays on Thursday, which it looks like he will? Or maybe not, we don't know. Put in a performance, okay, against lesser opposition. But I feel like that as a player, as a person, if you're looking at it from a mentality aspect, and similarly with the other players, if we'd had a game today where Aubameyang had missed, or maybe not Aubameyang, because he tends to always kind of get us out of a hole, and he tends to at some point, even if he has a bad game where he misses a few chances, he kind of makes it right the next game. But I'm just thinking of someone like Pepe, for example, who's very much a confidence player. Pepe's not played himself into form all season. Like, I'd rather Pepe, if we know he's going to be playing in the front 4 for a number of games for the end of the season, for the rest of the season, including the Europa League, you'd rather he starts he needs to pick up.
But like, say for example, again, back to the Thursday, Sunday, Thursday, whatever scenario. Like if a player had like sort of picked up a knock, was about 75% fit, but then you've got a game on Saturday where it's against Chelsea top 4 battle, then you're going to risk him. Yeah, right? All of us will say we're going to risk him, and then he might get injured. Whereas if we are playing for,
but that's different. 11, you're talking about injuries, you're talking about rotation.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. From Arteta's point of view, he doesn't need to have those decisions.
So he's not going to suddenly play like 11 different players on a Saturday game. If we're playing like Burnley or West Brom, he's still going to play. Majority. He's still. Well, I don't know. Like,
I'll give you who's he going to rest? Right.
Maybe.
Say today. It almost sounded like Smith Rowe and Saka were close and probably might have made the cut today. If you knew now that, like, say both of them were 75% fit and probably could have played today, but there was a risk that if we played them today, something could trigger or something could go wrong where they missed Thursday. Would you say Tierney, for example?
I agree with the squad rotation. No, I agree with that. I was just the only point I was challenging was, what you were saying about. I can't remember exactly what you said, so I don't want to quote you, but it sounded like, we can almost sacrifice points in the league to prioritize the Europa League. And if you guys just meant who we pick on a Saturday versus who we pick on a Thursday, then I kind of agree. Yeah. Although I don't think Arteta's going to, change the team from Thursday to Saturday to Thursday. However, I guess what I'm more referring to is that form. Basically, you can't. It's very difficult if you're playing the same core 6, 7, 8 players on a Saturday, that assuming they're all fit, so they're all going to play, and then they play again on the Thursday. If they're putting in shit performances on a Saturday, it's not as straightforward as it sounds to just then turn it on a Thursday, even if it isn't a big quarterfinal, semi-final, or even a final. So that's kind of where I feel like, if Aubameyang doesn't score for 4, 5, 6 games in the league, or Lacazette, and they're playing every game, it's then quite hard to then just suddenly turn it on a Thursday. Like when the chance comes, they've got to be, with a striker, it's quite, they go through these purple patches, right? It's very much confidence. And, if they've scored this chance before, then they're more likely to score the next one. At least that's kind of how I'm looking at it. It was just that one point, really. Yeah, well, I agree with the squad rotation.
Today's selection probably then sums up in some ways how we'll probably go forward in terms of if you're 100% fit, you'll play. But if there's a small doubt, then we won't risk you and we'll save you for the Europa League, basically, right? In the sense that, like today, like point said, like we could have ESR Saka. If this was a super important game for us, and if all the chips rode on this game, we probably would have played them. It sounded like, they could have maybe played, as he said, Aaron. And so, I think maybe we'll see that's how he manages it going forward, because I agree. I think you need to play players into form as well. And I think Arteta will also think that, look, if we win the majority of the rest of our games, then top 6 is still a possibility. Like that can still happen, right? If we win the majority of those games. And so there's no reason for him to just give up on that entirely, right? So I imagine that he will just continue trying to win games, continue putting his best team out, but ultimately I think Europa is priority. So if you've got a Saka with a niggle or an ESR in the niggle, you're not going to play them in the league.
Yeah, I agreed.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right, boys. Well,
right.
disappointing result today, but I guess we have a chance to bounce back quite quickly on Thursday. Fingers crossed they actually turn up for that one, because like you guys just said, it's a huge game for our season and for next season as well, potentially.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, we will see you next time. Again, as always, for those of you who have watched till the end, thank you very much for tuning in. Please hit the thumbs up button if you've enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.